Hello, and welcome to another video
by Game Dev Journey.
Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to add a ghost trail effect which follows the player around as he moves. I will demonstrate this in Godot and Construct. I really enjoy these kind of experiments, and if you enjoy watching them, please tap that like button and consider subscribing if you would like to see more from me in the future. Let's have a look at how to make a trail system in Godot. Let's first run the project, and I'll demonstrate that we have a player who can move around the screen in all four directions, but there's no trail. Let's add a new node, and let's add a particles 2D node. Now let's rename the node to trail, and let's add a texture to the node of the sprite used for the player. Now let's change the amount of particles emitted to 10, and let's make sure that the speed scale is set to 2. You can play around with these numbers, but this is what looks best. Take off local coordinates so that the texture for the particle moves with the player. Make sure that the material is a particle material. You'll see that it's dropping because of gravity. So let's go and turn gravity off. And there you see it stops dropping immediately. Now let's change the scale curve, because what this will do is it will make the particle that is emitted shrink from the size of the player, which is 0.5, to 0. So they're all going to fade to 0 in size. And we'll also make them fade in terms of their color gradient. So if we create a color gradient map or gradient ramp, we'll start by setting both colors to white. We'll move the alpha channel slightly down when the particle is first emitted, and completely off by the time the particle is fading away. And that should do it. If we have a look at our scene now, when we move around, we have a particle trail. If we set the z index to -1, that will put the particle trail behind the player. So when we run it now, you can see that the trail is behind the player. Excellent. Now let's take a look at how the process works in Construct. Right, let's just play our project here, and you can see we have the same little man who can walk in the 4 directions. Let's add another object to our layer, and it will be a particles object. Now let's import the sprite, and we'll use the same sprite we used in Godot. Now let's change a few of the particle properties. Let's change the rate at which particles are emitted to 10, and let's change the speed to 2. Make sure it is 100% size so that it matches the sprite that it will be trailing. And that preview looked very good. Let's add the event sheet for this particle effect. So let's make it so that when the player is moving, the particle is spraying or emitting. Now let's also make sure that the trail is at the same position as the player object. Let's make sure that when you release the movement keys, the trail stops emitting or spraying. Let's also make sure that when the layout first starts, the trail is not emitting. And let's also make it so that when you are not moving, you are also not emitting a trail. Now we should be able to test our output. And there we go. Let's just make sure that we change the Z order to be -1, which will put our trail behind the player. This is the Z elevation. -1 will put it behind the player. And there we go, a nice ghost trail. That brings us to the end, and I hope that you enjoyed that. Comment down below what else you would like me to experiment with. Once again, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all again next time.